shake your hand or no?
Yeah, you can shake my hand.
Hang on. Hang on. We good? How you going? Daisy Cousins.
Lovely to see you.
We are at CPAC, everyone. Sky News contributor.
Yes, indeed, and YouTuber as well.
Nice. The drinks were flowing tonight. I think young people need to come to the CPAC's events. They're missing out. I'm doing Lent right now, so I walk in, and I'm also unvaccinated. So I'm like, I snuck in, unjabbed. I'm like, cool. As soon as I get in, they're just like, do you want a beer? And I'm like, what? Should have done it a few weeks' time.
No, I think young people should absolutely come to these events more often. As you say, the drinks were flowing, but also there's a school of thought here and an ideology that I think really would appeal to young people more if it wasn't so stigmatized by the types of media and social media they consume. I think they see conservatism, if we're talking about that specifically, as social conservatism and nothing else. And young people aren't socially conservative. They're socially liberal or socially progressive because that's how the culture is. So they don't realize there's a whole other side to conservatism that is fiscal conservatism, about freedom and low taxes and all of those wonderful things. They just see this horrible, conservatives are backward because this is like, first of all, that's a giant exaggeration of what they're misframing, but take away the social side of it. There's a whole lot there that young people, particularly I think in their late 20s and their 30s, getting married, having kids,
You wake up.
You wake up, and I think that appeals to young people, but a lot of them just don't realize it because they have no one to expose them to it.
Like, so when I grew up, I was a bit wild, you know what I mean? We were wild, we grew up, my mum she was just like, do whatever you want. And I did. And I got, by a young age, I seen sort of what excess and no structure or no discipline brings people. So I kind of I was quickly like, I've partied for 10 years, you know what I mean? So you could be like, I'm 23, I've partied for 10 years, how much more partying do I need? Do you know what I mean? So I could quickly, at young enough, realise, like, okay, some discipline is good.
Yeah.
And then you benefit from this. It becomes like, you see all your loser friends who are like in their mid-30s who have nothing going in their lives, and you're like, that's a loser life, bro.
Yeah, well, I think leftism is quite a hedonistic ideology. It's quite a superficial ideology. It's all about sort of living in the moment, and there's something to be said for living in the moment, but not all the time.
For how long?
How long? Not all the time.
So you're like a 40-year-old who's still living in mum's basement.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yes,
Loser.
exactly. Exactly. There's no kind of incentive there because the perspective is that either everything should be handed to you or you should take it by burning stuff down.
System, man.
It's the system, man. Let's break down the system. There's no sense of self-ownership there. There's no sense of, hey, I can actually do these things if I maybe, got up before 9 o'clock in the morning and, thought of some things.
Put down the bong, man.
Put down, yeah, exactly. Put down all of that and motivated myself. But if you're telling kids from a young age, young people, the government should provide everything for you, well, of course there's not going to be any incentive to do anything, and it just sort of spirals. So I fear for our generation, I really do.
Yeah, for sure. They're in a trap. We get in a cycle. I feel like back in the day, here's a simple thing. Like, I've just had, my son is 16 months old, right? I got another one on the way.
That's wonderful.
And that is like, I would love to get wasted drunk. Not anymore. As soon as that kid comes, I think I had 2 hangovers after the kid's born, and I'm like, no.
Yeah, you can't
That
have a
died.
baby and have a hangover.
Yeah, that part of me died a quick death.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? There used to be, before we, our birth control, I feel like people were having shotgun weddings young, and they probably learnt that vital lesson earlier.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? That's something, young dudes were just starting families in the early 20s. Now it's like you're 35. We're 10 years behind the 8 ball. You know what I mean? Some of these simple things are just throwing our society out.
Yeah,
we stay kids till we're 40, some of these guys.
It's interesting, isn't it, how the sort of having of children happens later and later and later in life. I mean, I don't have kids yet, but it becomes sort of circumstantial. And part of it is, you can blame part of it on the fact that things are more expensive now. It's harder to get a house. There's that whole perspective of it. But a lot of it is the culture. You're expected to do all of this stuff in your 20s, to have all of this career progression in your 20s, and if you don't, and spend so much money on expensive university degrees and go into debt to do all of this stuff before you're 35, and I think that's massive pressure on young people. So stuff like
Just added onto the pressure.
yeah.
Just chucked it onto.
No, but it's true. So the things like, forming relationships and having families and all of that get sort of lost in the mix. And yes, it's hard. We can't really compare society now to what it was when people were having families in their early 20s because of the way, the economy has moved on. But
we're on a downward. We've got the snowball effect of negative momentum.
I think
all these
so.
things do go against
Yeah.
a conservative lifestyle.
Yeah, and the concept of having children and raising them and family values. That's sort of, that's the antithesis of leftism. That go all the way to communism, and they hated God and they
Hate
hated
the
family.
patriarchy.
No, but they hate God and the family because they usurp the place of the state in the hearts and minds of people. And it's the same with the left. That's why they're so atheistic. That's why they're so pro-abortion. That's why they're like women telling women, oh, you don't need a man needs a woman, like a woman needs a man like a fish needs a bicycle. All that kind of stuff. It's very, very anti-family.
Weird. Why can't, for me, I would be, even my parents broke up young. I was raised by my mum, but I kind of had the archetype picture in my head of what a father or a husband would be, like the heroic male dude. So I'm like, despite my dad, I'd be like, cool, I won't do that, but I can have the archetypal hero dad, father figure who I would like to be. What's going on, guys? Let's put the heroes back in the positions they should be.
Yeah, I think so. The role of the father has been so devalued in society over the last couple of decades. So and the necessity of fathers is, and that to me makes no sense because kids need their fathers. They need that type of figure in their lives. I don't know whether boys. I don't know whether boys need it more or girls need it more, or maybe they do in equal measure. But fathers that are so disparaged now, and if they're feeling instinctively fatherly, like they want to protect their children or protect their wives, and they're told that it's toxic masculinity and it's patriarchy and it's male privilege, it's like, no, I just love my kids, man, and I want to do the best I can for them, or you talk about, absent fathers in a disparaging way because they're working 80, 90 hours a week to provide for their families. People go, well, they're just spending all that time at work and not. That's their contribution. That's their male instinct kicking into work and work and work and work so their families can have a wonderful life. And yes, that's not an ideal balance, but that's not because they're negligent. That's generally the opposite. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. It's a strange thing for me to think of these communist lefties who destroy the patriarchy. That's what they carry on. There is no...
No one really knows what patriarchy is.
They don't really know what the patriarchy... I think of it as granddad at the head of the table who was made sure his sons were good to their wives, and there was moral accountability, but there was also financial accountability and structure of you've got a place to come where you can get help, get wisdom, get advice, and it trickles down. It's a mini government. The left want big government, big dad or mum government. You know what I mean? And we just want families' personal responsibility. I want the patriarchy. I want to be the guy at the head of the table one day and be like, get away from my badass tribe. We'll kill you.
A decentralized type of productive patriarchy, because then you have the patriarch and the matriarch. There are the two kind of roles there as well. So it's a decentralizing of the patriarchy. Yes.
They don't want powerful people. They don't want powerful families.
No, exactly. They want the family to be secondary. Certainly, if we want to go further over the way to sort of communist ideology, they want the family to be secondary to the state. And although sort of the modern left there, most of them are not to that extreme, it's that similar, that's that sort of anti-family thing. Family is secondary to the cause or to the government or whatever.
They need to wake up and realise they're in our camp, these anti-patriarchy weirdos.
Yes, a lot of people need to wake up. This was very, very lovely.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
You, CPAC.
CPAC.
Thanks for coming.
No worries. Thanks for having me.
Cheers.
See you next